In 2010, Mario was a 24-year-old engineer in Rome. He had a master's degree from a top Italian university. He spoke 3 languages. He applied to over 100 jobs in Italy. He got 0 offers. The few interviews he landed offered him unpaid internships at age 24 with a master's degree. So in 2011, Mario moved to Munich. Within 2 weeks, he had 3 job offers. He's been in Germany for 13 years. He's never coming back to Italy. Mario's story isn't unique. It's the story of an entire generation in Southern Europe. Over 5 million young people have left Italy, Spain, Greece, and Portugal since 2008. That's roughly the population of Finland, gone. This isn't normal immigration. This is the largest brain drain in European history. Southern Europe is hemorrhaging its most educated, most talented, most ambitious young people. And the exodus is accelerating. This is why Southern Europe is losing its youth, and why the consequences are about to get catastrophic. Let's start with the raw numbers, because most people don't realize how extreme this youth exodus has become. Italy. Since 2008, approximately 1.5 to 2 million Italians have emigrated, mostly young people aged 18 to 40. Italy now loses about 100,000 to 150,000 people per year through emigration. But here's the critical part. These aren't just any Italians. Over 40% of Italian immigrants have university degrees. Italy is exporting its most educated citizens. Youth unemployment in Italy hovers around 20 to 24%. For young people aged 18 to 34, underemployment, working part-time when you want full-time, or working in jobs that don't require your education level, is over 30%. Spain has lost approximately 2.5 million people since 2008, with the majority being under 40 years old. During the peak of the crisis, 2012 to 2015, Spain was losing 200,000 to 250,000 people per year. Spanish youth unemployment peaked at 55% in 2013. Today it's around 27%, still catastrophically high. Nearly 1 in 3 young Spaniards can't find work. And like Italy, the immigrants are disproportionately educated. Spanish engineers, doctors, researchers, and programmers are leaving in huge numbers. Greece has lost approximately 700,000 to 800,000 people since 2008, about 7% of their entire population. For a country of only 10 million, this is demographic devastation. Greek youth unemployment reached 60% during the debt crisis. Today it's around 25%, but wages are so low that even employed young Greeks struggle to survive. Greek doctors, engineers, and academics have left in such numbers that hospitals and universities can't fill positions. Portugal has lost about 500,000 people since 2008, with the majority being young professionals. Portugal's population is only 10 million, so this represents 5% of the country. Portuguese youth unemployment is around 20%. Wages for young professionals are so low that even employed young Portuguese can't afford housing or to start families. The destination. Where are they going? Primarily to Northern Europe and the UK before Brexit. Germany has absorbed over 1 million Southern European immigrants since 2008. UK absorbed about 800,000 before Brexit. France, Netherlands, Belgium, Switzerland, hundreds of thousands more. Many also go to North America, Australia, Latin America. Now, here's why this matters economically. Southern Europe is exporting its future. When a 25-year-old Italian engineer moves to Germany, Italy loses the taxes that engineer would have paid for the next 40 years, the innovations and businesses that engineer might have created, the children that engineer would have had, who would be future taxpayers and workers, the 20-plus years of education investment Italy made in that engineer. Italy paid to educate that engineer, and Germany gets all the benefits. This is the most one-sided trade deal in modern history, and it's not slowing down. If anything, it's accelerating. But why? What's causing this mass exodus? The first reason young Southern Europeans are fleeing is simple. There are no good jobs. But it's not just unemployment. It's the quality of jobs available. Let me explain what the Southern European job market looks like for young people. the precarious work trap. In Italy, Spain, Greece, and Portugal, the majority of jobs available to young people are temporary contracts. Contratti a tempo determinato in Italy, contratos temporales in Spain. These contracts last 3 to 6 months. No job security, no benefits, no path to permanent employment. When the contract ends, you're unemployed again. A typical young Southern European might work on 10 to 15 different temporary contracts over 5 to 7 years, never achieving permanent employment. You can't get a mortgage. You can't rent an apartment. Landlords want permanent contracts. You can't plan your life. In Italy, over 60% of workers under 30 are on temporary contracts. In Spain, it's over 50%. These aren't temporary jobs as a stepping stone to permanent employment. They're a permanent state of precarity, the unpaid internship economy. Southern European companies have created a system where young graduates work for free or near free for years. A 24-year-old with a master's degree in engineering will be offered a stage internship, paying 400 to 600 euros per month. In cities like Rome or Madrid, where rent is 600 to 800 euros per month, this is impossible to survive on without parental support. And these aren't 3-month internships. Companies chain together multiple 6-month internships, keeping young professionals in unpaid limbo for 2 to 3 years before maybe offering a low-paid temporary contract. The wage depression. Even when young Southern Europeans find permanent jobs, the wages are shockingly low compared to Northern Europe. A software developer in Rome might earn 28,000 to 35,000 euros per year. The same developer in Munich earns 55,000 to 70,000 euros, nearly double. A doctor in Greece earns 18,000 to 25,000 euros per year. In Germany, 60,000 to 80,000 euros, triple. An engineer in Spain might earn 25,000 to 32,000 euros. In the Netherlands, 45,000 to 60,000 euros. Now factor in that living costs in Southern European cities. Rome, Madrid, Athens, Lisbon are not that much lower than Northern Europe. Rent in central Rome is almost as expensive as rent in Berlin. So young Southern Europeans face a brutal calculation. Stay home and earn 25,000 euros, struggling to afford rent, or move to Germany and earn 55,000 euros with better job security and benefits. It's not even a difficult choice. The generational inequality. Here's what makes young Southern Europeans especially angry. Older generations are protected while young people suffer. In Italy, workers over 50 have strong labor protections. It's nearly impossible to fire them. They have permanent contracts, generous pensions, job security. But these protections don't extend to young workers. Companies refuse to hire young people on permanent contracts because labor protections make it too expensive. So they hire young people on temporary contracts with zero protections. The result? 2 labor markets in one country. Older workers with security and good wages. Young workers with precarity and poverty wages. This generational inequality is creating rage among young people. They're not just leaving for economic reasons. They're leaving because the system has abandoned them while protecting their parents' generation. But the broken job market is only part of the story. The second reason young people are fleeing is even worse. The second reason for the youth exodus. Young Southern Europeans can't afford housing. And I don't mean housing is expensive. I mean housing is mathematically impossible. Let me show you the numbers. Italy, average rent for a 1-bedroom apartment in Rome, 800 to 1,200 euros per month. Average salary for a young professional, 1,200 to 1,600 euros per month after taxes. That means 60 to 80% of income goes to rent. And that's before food, transportation, utilities, healthcare. To buy an apartment in Rome, you need about 250,000 to 400,000 euros. With a 1,400 euro monthly salary, getting a mortgage is nearly impossible. Even if you get one, you'll be paying it off until you're 70. Spain, average rent for a 1-bedroom in Madrid, 900 to 1,300 euros per month. Average salary for a young professional, 1,200 to 1,700 euros per month after taxes. Again, 60 to 75% of income on rent. Buying an apartment in Madrid requires 200,000 to 350,000 euros. Impossible on Spanish salaries. Barcelona is even worse. Rent has increased 50% since 2015, while wages have been flat or declining in real terms. Greece. Athens rent for a one-bedroom, 400 to 700 euros per month. Average salary for a young professional, 800 to 1,200 euros per month after taxes. Greece is slightly better, but only because the economy crashed so hard that both wages and housing prices collapsed. Even so, 50 to 60% of income goes to rent. Portugal. Lisbon rent for a one-bedroom, 800 to 1,200 euros per month. Average salary for a young professional, 900 to 1,400 euros per month after taxes. Lisbon has become one of the most unaffordable cities in Europe relative to local wages. Young Portuguese literally can't afford to live in their own capital. Why is housing so expensive? Several reasons. First, foreign investment. Northern Europeans and Americans buying vacation homes and investment properties in Southern Europe, driving up prices. A German retiree can sell their Berlin apartment and buy 3 in Rome with the proceeds. Second, Airbnb. Landlords convert long-term rentals into short-term tourist rentals because tourists pay more. This removes housing supply from the market, driving up prices for locals. Third, lack of new construction. Southern European cities have strict zoning laws that prevent new housing development. Supply can't increase, so prices keep rising. Fourth, speculation. Housing is seen as an investment, not shelter. Wealthy families buy multiple properties and hold them, waiting for prices to appreciate. The generational wealth divide. Here's the brutal reality. The only young Southern Europeans who can afford housing are those whose parents bought property 20 to 30 years ago and can help financially. If your parents own a house, they might help you with a down payment. If they don't, you're locked out of homeownership forever. This creates a permanent class division based entirely on whether your parents were born early enough to buy property before prices exploded. Young Southern Europeans are watching homeownership, the foundation of middle-class life, become impossible. So they leave for countries where housing is more affordable relative to wages. In Germany, Netherlands, or Sweden, housing is expensive, but wages are high enough that it's achievable. In Southern Europe, housing is expensive and wages are too low. But there's a third reason young people are leaving, and it's more psychological than economic. The third driver of the youth exodus is the most frustrating. Southern European societies are gerontocracies, societies ruled by the old for the old. Seniority über alles. In Southern European workplaces, age determines everything. Not competence, not results. Age. A 50-year-old with mediocre skills will be promoted over a 30-year-old with exceptional skills simply because they're older. The 50-year-old has seniority and therefore deserves the position. A 28-year-old in Italy might have a PhD and 5 years of experience, but will be called junior and paid accordingly. Meanwhile, a 55-year-old with only a high school diploma and outdated skills is senior and earns triple. This isn't merit-based, it's age-based, and it drives young, talented professionals insane. The old boys network. Southern European business and politics run on personal connections. Raccomandazoni in Italy, in Chufs in Spain. Getting a good job often requires knowing someone. Your uncle knows the hiring manager. Your father went to university with the CEO. Your family has connections. If you don't have these connections, if you're talented but your family isn't well connected, you're locked out. Young Southern Europeans look at their societies and see that hard work and talent matter less than being born into the right family and having the right connections. That's demoralizing. Resistance to change. Southern European organizations, companies, universities, government agencies resist change and innovation because change threatens the older generation's position. A 30-year-old suggesting new methods or technologies is told, "This is how we've always done it. You're too young to understand." Innovation requires risk-taking. But Southern European institutions are risk-averse because the people running them are older professionals protecting their positions, not young professionals trying to build something new. The political gerontocracy. Look at who runs Southern European countries. Average age of Italian parliament, 51 years old. Average age of Spanish parliament, 49 years old. Most government ministers are in their 60s or 70s. The people making decisions about pensions, labor laws, housing policy, and economic reform are from a generation that benefited from the old system and have zero interest in changing it. Young people look at their governments and don't see anyone who understands or cares about their problems. The contrast with Northern Europe. When young Southern Europeans move to Germany, Netherlands, or Nordic countries, they experience a culture shock. In Northern Europe, if you're competent and deliver results, you get promoted, regardless of age. A 28-year-old can be a team leader. A 32-year-old can be a department head. Merit matters more than seniority. Innovation is rewarded, not resisted. Younger professionals are taken seriously, not dismissed as too young. For talented young Southern Europeans, this is liberating. They're finally judged on their abilities, not their age or family connections. And once they experience that, why would they ever go back? So young Southern Europeans are leaving for jobs, housing, and meritocracy. What happens to the countries they leave behind? Demographic collapse. Italy's fertility rate, 1.24 children per woman, 2.1 needed for replacement. Spain's fertility rate, 1.19 children per woman. Greece's fertility rate, 1.32 children per woman. Portugal's fertility rate, 1.41 children per woman. These are among the lowest fertility rates in the world. Southern European populations are shrinking rapidly. But here's the kicker. The young people who would have children are leaving. When a 25-year-old Italian woman moves to Germany, she doesn't have Italian children. She might have German children. Italy lost 179,000 people in 2023 just from births minus deaths, not even counting immigration. The population is projected to fall from 59 million today to 47 million by 2070, a loss of 12 million people. The aging crisis. Southern Europe already has the oldest populations in the world. Italy's median age is 48. Spain's is 45. Greece's is 46. As young people leave, this gets worse. Soon, Southern Europe will be societies of retirees with almost no working-age population. Who will pay for pensions? Who will staff hospitals and schools? Who will maintain infrastructure? There won't be enough young workers to support the system. Economic stagnation. Young people are the most innovative, most entrepreneurial, most economically dynamic part of any society. They start businesses, create new technologies, drive economic growth. When they leave, economies stagnate. Southern Europe's GDP growth has been nearly zero for 15 years. Part of this is the brain drain. The people who would drive growth are in Germany. The investment death spiral. Companies don't invest in countries losing their young talent. Why build a research facility in Italy when all your engineers will leave for Germany? Why expand in Spain when you can't find young skilled workers? This creates a vicious cycle. No investment means fewer jobs, which causes more immigration, which means even less investment. The skills gap. Southern Europe is losing doctors, nurses, engineers, programmers, researchers, exactly professions they need to modernize their economies. Italy has a shortage of doctors because Italian medical graduates emigrate to Germany or UK, where they earn 2 to 3 times more. Greek hospitals can't find nurses. Spanish tech companies can't find programmers. The irony is cruel. Southern European governments invest billions in education, training engineers and doctors. Then Germany and UK benefit from this investment by hiring these professionals. Regional decline. This isn't uniform across Southern Europe. Capital cities like Rome, Madrid, Athens are struggling, but smaller cities in rural areas are dying. Young people leave small towns for capital cities looking for work. When they don't find it, they leave the country entirely. Small towns are left with almost no one under 40. In parts of rural Spain, Italy, and Greece, entire villages are being abandoned. Schools close because there are no children. Businesses close because there are no customers. These regions are entering terminal decline. But here's the most disturbing question. Can this be reversed? Or is Southern Europe's fate sealed? So can Southern Europe stop the youth exodus? Or is it too late? The honest answer: it's probably too late to fully reverse, but they could slow it down. Here's what would need to happen. What Southern Europe would need to do. First, labor market reform. End the two-tier system. Reduce protection for older workers while increasing protections for young workers. Make permanent contracts the default, not the exception. Ban unpaid internships for graduates. Second, housing reform. Build more housing. Tax empty properties and vacation homes heavily. Restrict Airbnb. Make housing affordable for young professionals. Third, wage increases. Raise minimum wages and entry-level professional salaries to levels where young people can actually afford to live independently. Fourth, meritocracy over seniority. Change workplace culture to reward competence and results, not age and connections. Reform hiring practices to be more transparent and less based on personal relationships. Fifth, political renewal. Get younger people into government. Create policies that serve young people's interests, not just retirees. Why this probably won't happen. Here's the problem. Every single one of these reforms would hurt the older generation that currently holds power. Labor market reform means older workers lose some protections. Housing reform means property-owning older generations see their home values fall. Wage increases mean companies, owned by older people, make less profit. And in democracies where older people are the majority of voters, politicians won't implement reforms that hurt their voter base. So we're stuck. Young people suffer and leave. Old people benefit and vote to maintain the status quo. The exodus continues until Southern European societies collapse demographically. The only realistic scenario, the most likely outcome, is that Southern Europe continues losing its youth for another 10 to 20 years until the demographic crisis becomes so severe that countries are forced to change. By then, it might be too late. Once you lose a generation, you can't get them back. The 30-year-old Italian engineer in Germany isn't moving back to Italy at 50. Their children will grow up German, not Italian. Some Southern European regions might depopulate entirely, like what happened to rural Eastern Europe after the fall of communism. The EU will probably have to implement some kind of wealth transfer system. Northern European countries paying to support Southern European pension systems that have no young workers to fund them. In 2010, Mario left Rome for Munich. He was 24 years old with a master's degree and no future in Italy. 14 years later, he's 38. He's a senior engineer earning 75,000 euros. He owns an apartment in Munich. He's married to a German woman. They have 2 children. When you ask Mario if he'll ever move back to Italy, he laughs. Why would I? My life is here. My children are German. Italy is where I visit my parents for Christmas. Mario's story is the story of millions of young Southern Europeans. They didn't want to leave. They were forced out by societies that offered them no future. And every year, hundreds of thousands more follow. Southern Europe's best and brightest, packing their bags and heading north, not as tourists, as refugees from their own dysfunctional economies. This is the great youth exodus, and it's slowly killing Southern Europe. The question isn't whether Southern Europe will change. The question is whether they'll change before there's no one young left to save. If this changed how you think about Europe's demographic crisis and why young people are fleeing Southern Europe, hit subscribe. Drop a comment. Are you from Southern Europe? Have you left, or are you planning to? And share this with someone who needs to understand why an entire generation is abandoning their homelands. Because the greatest economic tragedy isn't poverty. It's wasting an entire generation of talent because your system refuses to change. I'll see you in the next one.